I think it's just important to know as a consumer that brands might be misleading you. They might not be telling you the whole truth about everything. And I think the number of brands that are high quality, high end, and cruelty-free shows that you don't need to test on animals to A, create a good quality product, or B, be successful as a brand. You can build this huge beauty empire of amazing products and be completely cruelty-free. Hi everyone, I'm Tashina from Logical Harmony. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's video is a little bit different. It's all about brands that are not cruelty-free that you might think are cruelty-free. There are so many brands that I get questions about all the time, or people who are confused who are like, wait, I thought X brand was cruelty-free. X brand told me they're cruelty-free. Their website says they're cruelty-free, and they test on animals, and people are so surprised to find out. And because I get so many questions, I wanted to do a video just sharing these brands with you so you guys can be a little more aware as consumers. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Just keep watching if you want to learn more. Real quick before we get into it, I want to apologize for any background noise. I think they're doing like some stuff outside, and then we have some furniture set up, and my neighbors are being noisy today, so I apologize in advance for any background noise that you guys are hearing. So before we get into this too, I also want to touch on what does Logical Harmony define cruelty-free as? So if you are new to cruelty-free, welcome. I'm glad you've decided to make this journey. I'm Tashina, I run Logical Harmony, and my goal with Logical Harmony is to make going cruelty-free easy for you. So through that, I have obviously my YouTube channel with tons of videos to help you find products that are cruelty-free and learn more about them and see what your options are. And then on my website, logicalharmony.net, I have tons of resources for you. So like cruelty-free shopping guides for different stores, vegan product lists for different brands, just different updates of explaining how, what is going on in the cruelty-free world, what you can trust, and what information is out there. I think that it is very, very important to be an educated consumer. And I think it's also really important to use your voice as a consumer. So it's really important to let brands know when you appreciate that they're cruelty-free, and to let brands know you're not going to buy them because they are not cruelty-free. I think it's incredibly important to use your voice. Going into what cruelty-free means for Logical Harmony, I do have a post on Logical Harmony explaining this, and I will make sure to link to a ton of resources down below, whether it's other videos here on the channel or posts on the website. And the summary version is that, to me, cruelty-free means there is no animal testing anywhere at any time. So that is everywhere from the raw ingredients through the production and the formulation of the product to the finished product to when it's out on the market. And animal testing can happen at any point during that process. So you can have raw ingredients that are tested on animals, formulations and products that are tested on animals, finished products that are tested on animals, and there's even post-market animal testing, which is when products are pulled off the shelf to be tested on animals. So it can happen at any time, and that's why I think it's so important as a consumer to understand what cruelty-free means to you. Another thing that makes this tricky is there's no legal definition of cruelty-free, and there is no agreed on definition either. So any brand can say they're cruelty-free even if they test on animals, and a lot of people don't realize that, and I think that's something that makes it really confusing. So much of the time what happens is that brands will say, we're cruelty-free, we don't test on animals. And technically, it's the truth. The brand is not testing on animals themselves. They're paying a third party to test on animals on their behalf, or they're paying a government lab to test for them. So in that case, the brand can say we don't test on animals because technically the brand itself is not testing on animals. It's not employees of the brand that are running the tests, and they don't own the animal testing facilities. A popular myth that I see is people think brands own their own animal testing facilities, and I have not yet found a single brand that owns an animal testing facility. Every brand that I've ever talked to that does test on animals will say that it's a third party doing the animal testing for them, and they're just providing the financial, means to do the animal testing. So I think that's really important to know, and that's one way that brands can really kind of confuse people into thinking that they're cruelty-free. They're just going to say, we don't test on animals, and if you don't dig deeper, they can leave it out that they're paying for those tests to happen because they don't need to tell you. And unfortunately, that's the case with a lot of brand FAQ pages, since there are no laws around cruelty-free. There's no regulations around it. Brands can tell you as little or as much information as they want. So a brand could put on their FAQ page, we're cruelty-free, we don't test on animals, we love animals, and still be testing on animals and paying someone else to test on animals on their behalf. They don't have to put that on there for you, and they don't have to tell you when you email or call them. So I think that is really, really important as a consumer to know that brands might be misleading you. They might not be telling you the whole truth about everything. So it's really important to understand where animal testing happens and figure out what resources you can trust. So I do have a full list of brands that do test on animals on Logical Harmony, and I have an even bigger list of brands that do not test on animals on there as well. So brands that are cruelty-free. For those of you who just want to hear the brands, we're going to jump into that right now. So the brand I get asked about most often that people are most surprised is not cruelty-free is MAC. MAC is not cruelty-free, unfortunately. I know that MAC markets as cruelty-free. I've seen flyers in Ulta saying MAC is cruelty-free. Their website says that they're cruelty-free. Their website also says that they do test on animals as required by law. MAC is not cruelty-free, unfortunately. And that is a case where it's just about tricky wording, and we'll get into what required by law animal testing means a little later in the video. There is also a link to a blog post on Logical Harmony in the description box, where if you just want to jump ahead and read that and get more details, go ahead. Another brand that is so popular that people think is cruelty-free all the time is L'Oreal, and unfortunately, L'Oreal is not cruelty-free. To L'Oreal's credit, they are actually doing a lot to help create alternatives for animal testing, and I think that is really amazing. It'd be even more amazing if they stopped testing on animals at the same time. L'Oreal is also an example of how required by law animal testing is not specific to China. What I have been told so many times is that even if L'Oreal were to pull out of China, because they come out with new ingredients and new formulations that are not yet proven safe in other areas, they would still have to test on animals. I'll explain a little bit more about that later in the video, but just so you guys know, required by law animal testing is optional for brands, and it is not specific to China. So a brand could not even enter the Chinese market and still have to test as required by law. Another brand that people are really shocked to hear isn't cruelty-free is Benefit. Benefit has marketed as cruelty-free for a long time. Their FAQ page says they're cruelty-free. If you are shopping online, like at Sephora, a lot of the product pages for their products say that they're cruelty-free, and unfortunately, they're not. A drugstore brand that has surprised many people is OGX. OGX literally prints on their packaging not tested on animals, and it is tested on animals, unfortunately. This is really frustrating for a lot of people because they think they can go in and buy it because it's marketed as cruelty-free, and unfortunately, it's not cruelty-free. A brand that was a huge disappointment to many is NARS. Now, NARS was cruelty-free for a very long time, and so many people had a really solid makeup kit based around NARS because they were one of the few pro brands with a good shade range that was cruelty-free. Unfortunately, they did decide to enter the market in China a couple of years ago, which does require animal testing. And when I broke the news about that, people in the cruelty-free community were shocked. And I will say I did hear feedback that the brand didn't know that the cruelty-free community really cared that much about them. And I think that's a great example of why it's so important to let brands that are cruelty-free know that you love that they're cruelty-free, and that's part of why you're a customer of theirs. Another brand I get so many questions about is Origins. And unfortunately, Origins is also not cruelty-free. They say on their website that they are, they say at their counters that they are, and unfortunately, they're not. And last but not least, a brand that I don't get a lot of questions about, but I did just see covered on a vegan website is Caudalie, and Caudalie is unfortunately not cruelty-free. Now, the reason I wanted to bring them up is because I think it's a good example of how wording on brand FAQ pages and wording by brand reps can be really confusing to people and make them think that brands are cruelty-free when they're not. Now, a few things that you can do as a consumer are use your voice. I think it's, again, incredibly important to let brands know when you support that they are cruelty-free and that you're not supporting them because they're not. Bottom line is that sales matter to these brands. And so let brands know when they've lost your business, basically when they've lost your money because they're testing on animals or allowing testing on animals to happen. And let them know when they've gained your business because they're cruelty-free. Let them know that it matters to you. Even if it's a brand you've been buying from for years, shoot them a quick email or tweet at them or leave a comment on Instagram and say, hey, I love you guys. You've been one of my favorite brands for years, and I love that you're cruelty-free. This is so important to me. It's really, really important to let brands know that it matters. If, like me, you only use vegan products, let brands know that as well. Say, hey, thanks for being cruelty-free, and I love that you make it easy to find vegan options. Or thanks for being cruelty-free, please make it easy to find vegan options from you guys. It's really important to communicate to brands what's important to you because they are collecting this data and it does factor into their decisions. Another thing that you can do that's going to be really helpful is just educate yourself. Unfortunately, at stores like Sephora and Ulta or beauty counters, people are not trained on what cruelty-free is and what brands are cruelty-free. So you might ask a sales associate, is MAC cruelty-free? And they'll say, yeah, because everything from MAC says that they're cruelty-free. You can't expect them to know what cruelty-free means to you and what your standards are and where you are on your cruelty-free journey. So you really need to do your best to be an empowered consumer. And that's where I try and make things as easy for you as possible. So there's so many shopping guides on Logical Harmony. I cover so many products here in videos or on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe here and follow me on Instagram if you want more tips and just little products that you can check out or some updates on brands. I think it's just so important as a consumer to be aware and be educated and really, really use your voice. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Again, I do have a full list of brands that are cruelty-free on Logical Harmony, so don't get bummed out if one of the brands mentioned today was one of your favorites. Think of it as now you have an excuse to try more fun brands, and there are so many amazing brands out there that are cruelty-free and are worth supporting. You just need to find them, and they're very, very easy to find, thankfully. If you guys have any questions, please leave comments below. I'll do my best to answer them there. I think some of them could inspire really great videos in the future or blog posts, so leave those below, and make sure you check out the description box for a ton of other resources that are going to be super helpful for you in your cruelty-free journey. I'll see you next time.